What's going on, everyone? My name is Prirakshithani. I'm an MDM-based student here at Yale, and today I want to tell you about this video. And the reason I want to tell you about this video is because imposter syndrome is something that everyone struggles with. And to this day, I get tons of messages from individuals saying that they're struggling with feeling incompetent, and I still feel a lot like this sometimes. And I came across an article the other day that made me feel much better, and it was titled, "You're Not an Imposter, You're Actually Pretty Damn Amazing." And I thought that title was very fitting. And so I'm making this video for myself down the road when I feel imposter syndrome, because I know for a fact I will as I start residency. But I'm also making it for all of you who may be struggling with something and feeling like, man, I just don't feel nearly as good as the people I'm around. So with that, let's get started. What is the source of this video? It's actually a article that was published in Harvard Business Review. As you know, I'm an MD MBA student, and so I do a lot of MBA reading on the side. And within some of these MBA stories, they actually talk a bit about why people may feel incompetent and ways to kind of get around those feelings, because that can lead to more productivity in the workplace. So with that being said, I'm going to link this article in the description below so you can obviously check it out. The overview of this article is that imposter syndrome is this belief that you do not belong and that you're not worth being wherever you are, whether that's in your job, whether that's currently if you started undergrad and you feel like you're not good enough, whether you started medical school and you feel like, damn, everyone just knows everything. I personally struggled with imposter syndrome when I was admitted to UC Berkeley, and just being around people who were 10 times smarter than me just seemed just so much more composed than I was, whereas I was just like this very naive person who like didn't even know if I would be able to make it in college. The official definition was termed by psychologists in the 1970s in a research paper, and again, I'll link that paper below. And it noted that there are three critical attributes of the phenomenon in imposter syndrome. The first one is that you think that people have an exaggerated view of your abilities. In other words, you think that people see you as better than you actually are. In other words, you are worse than other people make you out to be because you're an imposter. The second thing is you have a fear of being exposed as a fraud. So if you are consistently thinking that people have exaggerated views of your abilities, the second thing you may fear is people may find out like, oh, wow, he's actually not as good as he thinks he is, or, oh, wow, he actually isn't as smart as, we thought he was, and maybe he shouldn't be at UC Berkeley at all. The third one is this continuous tendency to downplay your achievements, because again, you think that you're not good enough, you think that you're an imposter, so if you accomplish something, it clearly can't be that tough because you did it. uh, it's really bad way of thinking. It obviously leads to a very like low self-esteem, and a very low impression of yourself. About one third of people suffer from it, and about 70% of individuals will experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives, and so it's a very common thing, so it just takes them faith in it. And today we're going to go over a few ways to get over imposter syndrome and show you why you're actually pretty amazing. There are different strategies for this, but the number one that was laid out in the article, and something that I have found to be very helpful, is positivity. So much of imposter syndrome is talking down to yourself and feeling like you're not good enough and telling yourself you're not good enough, which reaffirms that very cycle. But instead, if you then acknowledge that you're not the only one going through this, and if you start seeing things as a way of if you start seeing things in a more positive light rather than something that will like make you exposed, then I think that can sometimes be helpful. So for example, in the article it mentioned, like, say your boss has given you an assignment that you feel like you're not qualified to do. Instead of like thinking that you're going to get exposed and that people are going to realize that you're not as good as you are, then you should be positive and think about the fact that your boss chose to give you this, and that this is instead a way for you to kind of prove your worth, and that your boss clearly believes in you and trusts you to do good work. Notice how those are two different sides of essentially the same situation, but they're very different sides. In one case, you think your boss chose you and that like it's essentially an opportunity to set you up for failure, and like there's so many ways to go wrong and that you're going to be exposed. The second one is to realize like, wow, he chose me. Clearly, I must have done a certain number of things right for him to have faith in my abilities, and I want to try to make sure I don't let him or her down, right? So notice that this positive spin on a lot of things can be very, very helpful. In my personal life, I remember at UC Berkeley, I would just think that, man, I'm not good enough to be in this class. But then the moment I ended up getting a good grade, I would kind of reaffirm to myself, like, oh, okay, maybe I am supposed to be here. Maybe I do deserve this. Maybe I do know what's going on. And that slowly, over 3 years, it took me 3 years, but 3 years of good grades later, I slowly realized, like, oh, maybe I do deserve to be here, and maybe I do actually know a few things here and there that make me a good student. And that positivity then became self-fulfilling because then instead of talking down to myself, I actually then slowly started talking myself up. Like, Prerak, you got this. You've passed all these classes before. You sure you can pass this one. Let's now talk about the second strategy, which is to celebrate small wins. Hashtag winning, right? Because believe it or not, one of the worst ways to kind of end up in the cycle of imposter syndrome is to see everything as a negative personality trait, right? So even if you do well on a test, it's like, oh, I just got lucky. Even if you happen to slowly get better at something, you're like, well, I was pretty shitty to begin with, right? So there is this whole aspect of imposter syndrome that is built on the foundation of negative thinking. One way to get around the negative thinking is to celebrate the small wins. Adam Grant has mentioned this tons of times. A lot of psychologists have shown that small wins is a great way to set a positive control with yourself. And one way to tangibly do this is to, for example, write down 3 things that went right every night. So at the end of the day, have a journal and write down 3 things that went right today that you were happy about. And what this allows you to do is compare yourself with yourself. Screw everyone else, right? The problem with social media, which we're going to talk about later, is that it forces you to realize, like, man, I'm not that good when you start seeing what everyone else is doing. But guess what? Social media is quite literally a digital realm of outliers. No one puts their true self on social media because what they're actually putting on social media is, if you look at their normal distribution of experiences, is the experiences that are in like the 95th percentile, right? They're putting the things that are really, really awesome only on social media. So social media now becomes this digital realm of positivity that you think you can never live up to because you are, in your life, you're seeing the whole normal distribution curve, but on social media, you're only seeing the top 5% of everyone else. So that's horrible. Small wins allow you to now compare yourself to yourself, no one else. So when you celebrate a small win, think about things that went right for your day today that maybe didn't go right the other day. Waking up on time, getting a full 8 hours of sleep, feeling well rested, talking to your parents, making time to go and exercise. These are all small wins. And when you do these things and you make a cognizant acknowledgement of them, I think that is like the first step in realizing, like, wow, I am a little bit better than I was yesterday. The other thing is also small wins show you where you started and like where you have the possibility to end, right? So if you're like me, I actually wanted to start doing push-ups. So I started with 5 and I did 1 more a day. And now I can do 50 in a row, which is crazy. But all of this to say, you can slowly build up small wins, right? If you can get 1% better every day, you can actually lead to monumental changes. 1% better every day means that you're 3 times better than you started because you're 365% better by the end of the year. And this is actually in Atomic Habits, which is a book I strongly recommend you check out. The other thing that small wins allow you to do is to realize that even when things go horribly, horribly wrong, and maybe you have the absolute worst day ever, there are always things that go right. This is almost like the way of realizing that the sun is always going to rise again tomorrow. And even if you have a crappy day today, tomorrow is going to be a new day filled with maybe even bigger wins. But even on a day where you feel like all you had was massive L's, there's always going to be a way to like look for wins. Another thing to remember is that even when you have losses, those can be wins, right? And I think the best example of this for like a lot of people is like they don't get into a dream school. Well, guess what? The fact that you didn't get into your dream school may actually be a huge blessing in disguise because the opportunities that open up at the school that you're currently at are probably opportunities you would have never had, and therefore you would not become the person that you are today. And that's something that I always think about because I was like, damn, I'm so grateful that I ended up here at Yale because I genuinely feel like this is the best version of myself that I can be. And I don't know if I would have been this way if I had gone to any other school, right? So your job is not to try to like, you can always aim high, but your job should not always be to like make sure you meet that goal. Your job is to lay it all out on the table, put every effort out there, and then let the results speak for themselves. And if the results are not what you want them to be, that's okay. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And you don't know what this change in expectations is going to lead you to down the road. So that's the second tip. The third tip is to use social media. And I have a huge asterisk next to this because social media, as I just mentioned before, is toxic AF. But there are also really good things on social media that I think have actually helped me a lot. I start my morning by listening to certain like religious sermons sometimes within my personal Hindu religion. Other times I listen to a lot of speeches, like Steve Jobs' speech, and other times I listen to a lot of books. And all of these things are present on YouTube, they're present on Instagram, and they actually do a lot for me because they show me that I'm not alone in struggling. But at the same time, also realize that most of social media is actually very toxic. So I only try to use social media with the asterisk because I try to use it as a way of seeing all that is good in the world and also realizing, like, oh my God, so many people have gone through what I'm going through right now and they've made it out. Like Steve Jobs, for example, was fired from the very company that he started. If you think about like the lowest of the lows that he experienced, he also was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which he later ended up dying from. So, and he yet was able to do like such incredibly amazing things. And he actually talks a bit about all of those things in this commencement address. And so, like, just being exposed to people like that, being exposed to the Dalai Lama, who also has a few books on YouTube, being exposed to people just talking about these things and things they've gone through has been very, very insightful for me. But as I said, don't try to focus on the social media side of like Instagram influencers, people who are like very like non-genuine. The people I try to follow are the ones who I get a very genuine vibe from, who are authentically themselves on social media and off social media, and I try to do the same. But I can tell you for a fact that when I'm feeling like lowest of the lows, which I feel quite often, I don't want to be on social media. So unfortunately, just purely because of selection bias, when I'm on social media, it tends to be this better side of me. And that's something that, you know, it's tough to gauge, but this is something you should be aware of when you're on social media and realizing like, damn, am I the only one who feels crappy? No, a lot of people feel crappy. They probably aren't going to social media to discuss it. And if they are, follow that person. I have several other medical school like people I follow, and one of them is just so good because she just opens up about everything she's struggling with, and it really helps me because I say, wow, I like wish I like had the ability to talk about these things when I'm feeling the way you feel, but I just don't. I can't even like go on the phone. So all of that to say, use social media with a massive asterisk next to it, mostly for inspiration and to realize that you are not alone in feeling whatever it is you're feeling. Last but not least, and I think this strategy is, as I said, kind of hinted on in numbers 1 through 3, focus on yourself. You are here, you're the only person who's seen your entire life, and you're the only person best poised to judge yourself. You can't judge yourself based on someone else that you're seeing. As I said, normal distribution-wise, you're seeing someone else's 5%. You have no idea how they're living the other 95% of their life. On the social media, you're seeing their best 5%. If you are comparing yourself to that top 5%, it's a recipe for disaster, it's a recipe for feeling bad about yourself, and it's a recipe to propagate imposter syndrome. And so because of that, just try to focus on yourself. And as I said, try to be 1% better every day. It's not about like how great you are, absolutely. It's about improving. And I'm actually writing a paper right now on how you can be successful in the hospital as a medical student. And I actually realized that I was the most successful on rotations where if I started here and I got to here and people saw that progress, they were really proud of me. Whereas on rotations where even if I started really high, if I didn't get much better, people were like, okay, well, it doesn't seem like you learned much, right? So you want to focus on growth. You always want to focus on your weak points, and you always want to focus on getting better. I think life without obstacles is not life. The fact that we have obstacles is like the name of the game. I think we sign this like implicit consent when we're born to realize like life's going to be kind of tough. And we kind of have to find ways to address that, and imposter syndrome is just one of those ways. Remember that even the most accomplished people have room for improvements. Making mistakes is inevitable, and if you learn from these mistakes, it's okay to fail every now and then. This is a quote taken directly from the article. So, as I said, to summarize everything, you're not an imposter. You're pretty damn amazing. Focus on yourself. You are going to be amazing. Just get a little bit better every day. And even if you don't get better every day, it's fine. It happens. It happens to the best of us. Just focus on being yourself and realize that you are not what everyone else is on social media. You are yourself, and that is something you should be proud of. So I hope this was helpful for you. I really enjoyed this article. If you did, drop a like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.